This morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 24, continuing on with the Leela of Lord Ram. Jasma adat udadi uda bayanga vepo Margam sapadyari puram haravadiraksho Dure surin matita rosha susona dristya Tatapyamana makuro raganakra chakra Chakra. Translation. The personality of Godhead Ramchandra, being aggrieved for his distant intimate friend Sita, glanced over the city of the enemy Ravana with red-hot eyes like those of Hara, who wanted to burn the kingdom of heaven. The great ocean, trembling in fear, gave him his way because of its family members, the aquatics, like the sharks, snakes and crocodiles, were being burnt by the heat of the angry red-hot eyes of the Lord. Purport. The personality of Godhead is every sentiment of a sentient being, like all other living beings, because he is the chief and original living entity, the supreme source of all other living beings. He is the Nitya, or the chief eternal amongst all other eternals. He is the chief one, and all others are the dependent many. The many eternals are supported by the one eternal, and thus both the eternals are qualitatively one. Due to such oneness, both the eternals constitutionally have a complete range of sentiments, but the difference is that the sentiments of the chief eternal are different in quantity from the sentiments of the dependent eternals. When Ramchandra was angry and showed his red-hot eyes, the whole ocean became heated with that energy, so much so that the aquatics within the great ocean felt the heat, and the personified ocean trembled in fear and offered the Lord an easy path for reaching the enemy's city. The impersonalists will see havoc in this red-hot sentiment of the Lord because they want to see negation in perfection. Because the Lord is absolute, the impersonalists imagine that in the absolute, the sentiment of anger, which resembles mundane sentiments, must be conspicuous by its absence. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, they do not realize that the sentiment of the absolute person is transcendental to all mundane concepts of quality and quantity. Had Lord Ramchandra's sentiment been of mundane origin, how could it disturb the whole ocean and its inhabitants? Can any mundane red-hot eye generate heat in the great ocean? These are factors to be distinguished in terms of the personal and impersonal conceptions of the absolute truth. As it is said in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the absolute truth is the source of everything. So the absolute person cannot be devoid of the sentiments that are reflected in the temporary mundane world. Rather, the different sentiments found in the absolute, either in anger or in mercy, have the same qualitative influence, or in other words, there is no mundane difference of value because these sentiments are all on the absolute plane. Such sentiments are definitely not absent in the absolute, as the impersonalists think, making their mundane estimation of the transcendental world. So Srila Prabhupada emphatically states the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramchandra, and his sentiments. In this case, in this particular description by Lord Brahma, he is very angry at the ocean. Now this anger is not mundane anger. Generally the mundane anger is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Trividam narakasjedam dvaram nasamatmana kama krodas lobas tasmarikatrayam dajit. This anger, this greed, this lust, Krishna describes these things as gateways to hell. And previously, in the previous verses, the hell described is that when the living entity goes down to the really low species of life, like the insects, when someone is very envious and someone is very greedy and lusty, and in the human form of life it is not compatible to be so envious and to be so angry. If you want to be continuously envious and angry, better you go down to the lower species, that those bodies can facilitate that anger, quick anger, red hot, just like dogs. Dogs can be your friend 1 minute and the next moment within a second, right? Within a second it can happen. So some people are like that, as they go and they jump all over. That's a typical symptom of the mode of ignorance. So anger, like that, if someone is envious, always envious, then better to go down to the more envious species of life. And it is mentioned by Krishna that actually such persons, especially those who are very, very angry all the time and very envious, and they're continuously put down in the lower species of life. They have to go life after life in those species to work it off, in more or less. Work it off. It may seem like a big punishment, but actually it's another form of mercy of the Supreme Lord, because they go through that, and then at some point the Lord is merciful, gives them the association of devotees, or even in that form of life. You can be a venomous spider or a snake or something like that, and the kirtan is there or something, and then they're benefited even in that. So the Lord is merciful, and also merciful in that seeming punishment. So generally, anger and greed, these things, as I mentioned, they're very detrimental for the living entities. And even devotees, it is said that in the beginning stages, one has to avoid these things. One has to be very careful about anger. One has to be very careful about greed. One has to be very careful about lust. One has to regulate these things, otherwise they can be devastating within a moment of anger or the moment of screaming. Sounds like a little bird. And in a moment of anger, you read it about all the time. They were the best friends, and in the moment of anger, bang, the other one kills the other one. Just it flares up all of a sudden. All of a sudden, things were going, and it flares up. Anger comes so like a huge wave coming over, just engulfs that person and totally absorbs them, overwhelms them. And then because of that anger, all sorts of devastating things can happen. And greed also, uncontrolled, envy, lust, envy. Now, generally the anger in this world is generally the result of lust. When lust goes unsatisfied, one becomes frustrated. And then when one's frustrated, that leads to anger. You're frustrated. You didn't get what you wanted, you become angry. And as mentioned, that anger is generated in the fists, in the eyes, and the words. It can be generated in different places. And in the eyes, as mentioned, red hot eyes. He looked at me with red hot eyes. Well, he gave me the snake eye. The snake eye. A very envious eye, right? The snake eye. These red hot eyes. But when the Lord manifests this, it's completely transcendental. It is actually a mercy. It is a mercy. And so here we read about the Lord became angry. This is summarized greatly, this whole story. This story is a very wonderful part of the section of the Ramayana, the story of how Lord Ram got to Rameshwaram, what's now called Rameshwaram. I've been there a few times. Very, very beautiful area of India, just even materially speaking, very, very beautiful. And I've been a few times. Virabhadra, I've been one time with Virabhadra in the early 80s, and then again I went with Braja Gauranga and other devotees also. Very, very beautiful. It's actually on an island. You go over by the train, or you can go by road also. You go over there. And there's a beautiful temple, Rameshwaram Temple. It's one of the Mahajoti Lingas. It is said when Ram came back from Lanka with Sita, he wanted to atone for the sin of killing a Brahmana. And that Brahmana was Ravana, because he was the son of Vishravas. He was a Brahmana father. His mother was different, but the father was a Brahmana. So he thought, of course, the Lord didn't have to do anything to do atonement, but he wanted to set the example. So he thought that he wanted to worship Lord Shiva in the form of his lingam. And so he asked Hanuman to go and fetch a lingam, Shiva lingam, in the Himalaya. So Hanuman set off, but he was taking a long time. So meanwhile, they were waiting, and then Sita decided to fashion a lingam out of sand. And she made a Shiva lingam out of sand. Now it is said, the story is that sand hardened and became a hard stone Shiva lingam. It's considered one of the, of course, Rameshwaram is one of the, there's Chatu Dham, the 4 holy places of India in the different directions. In the north it's Badrik Ashram and Dwarka, in the west Puri in the east, and in the south it's Rameshwaram. And so there, that Shiva lingam, they started to do the worship. And meanwhile, Hanuman arrived back with the Shiva lingam. So Lord Ram said, we will worship both. We will worship both. And actually Hanuman took all the effort. Actually, one should worship that lingam first. So actually the tradition is when you go in the temple, you have to go to that lingam first. There's 2 lingams like that. There's a number of lingams, but they're the 2 main ones. So that lingam that Hanuman brought is worshipped first, and then you go to the... initially it is said that a little hut was built over the lingam, and then over the centuries and so on, there's a big temple there. A very beautiful place. And nearby there also is a place called Dhanushkoti. Dhanushkoti, it is it's abandoned now. There was a cyclone that hit there in 1964 and wiped out the town. It's about 20 kilometres from Rameshwaram. So when you stay there at Rameshwaram, then you go out. It's kind of all sandy desert there now. There used to be more lush. I heard there used to be more lush out there. But cyclone hit and wiped out the town. The town was about 1,000 people town, and it was a bit of a port also. And so you see the ruins there, and it was kind of just abandoned. After that cyclone hit, it just kind of flattened it. It flattened everything. So it was abandoned. So Dhanushkoti that's a famous place, and right there you take a dip in the ocean there. The Setu Band, or the Rama Setu. Setu means bridge. Setu, the bridge that Lord Ram had constructed to Lanka is in that place. It's a place called Dhanushkoti. It's named Dhanush because actually it is said when Ram came back, he broke the bridge. He broke the bridge with his bow, Dhanush. And therefore that's the name Dhanushkoti comes from, where Ram broke the bridge. Actually there now is there's a kind of a natural bridge. It's called Adam's Bridge. It's made of natural whatever. And it's a kind of a natural kind of arch bridge that goes in the ocean. But you go in the ocean there, you take a dip, so you go there, and that's part of the ritual of going to that place. You take a beautiful, and going in that ocean there, it's so warm. It's like taking a warm bath in that ocean. It's kind of protected. The whole bay is protected, so it doesn't, so in the water itself is very warm. Virabhadra and myself were like kind of floating in it is like taking a warm bath in it. It's like a spa. The waves were coming in, hot, very beautiful. Of course, if I hadn't known about these sharks, crocodiles and snakes, I wouldn't have stayed in so long. The sharks, crocodiles and snakes here. Right, so Anyway, so very, very, very beautiful. Now, this description of how the Lord had the bridge built is a very fascinating story. It's very nicely described in the section of Ramai and also in the Puranas. Now, of course, we know that Sita was kidnapped by Ravan when Lord Ram was living in exile. Now, interesting point that you may or may not have heard, that in the Agni Purana it's mentioned that Lord Agnidev appeared to Lord Ram even before Ravana came for Sita. This is not so well known. You've probably heard about he swapped the Sitas, but he came to Lord Ram even before Sita was kidnapped by Ravan, and he said, and he paid his obeisance to Lord Ram, because there's many, Rams come many times, so many of these demigods, they know the story. Said, Ravan is going to become soon. Let him not touch Sita. Allow me to take the real Sita with me to my ashram, and I'll create a Chaya Sita, a replica Sita. So Lord Ram kept this secret even from Lakshmana. He didn't tell anyone. So in other words, he knew beforehand that Ravana was going to come, and he was going to take the replica Sita. And there's a whole story of the Chaya Sita also. A Chaya Sita later on, she became like a Sava Lakshmi in the heavenly planets, and that same individual became Vedavati, that later cursed Ravana, and also became Draupadi. He later became, that Chaya Sita later became Draupadi in Krishna Leela time. So all these are Leelas all interconnected in so many ways. But anyway, that's Chaya Sita, but the real Sita was taken away, and later on, and it was actually Agnidev and said, and later on you will prove her purity by putting her in the fire. But do not be concerned, I will protect her. And of course Lord Ram could do all the protecting he wanted. But anyway, this allowed all this Leela to happen. I'll protect her, and that time I'll bring the real Sita, and I'll take the false Sita. And he actually said that Agni created the false Sita. So that's an interesting story there in regard to that Lord Ram actually knew that Ravana was going to come, but he just kept it secret, even from Lakshmana. He didn't tell anyone. Didn't tell the monkey, didn't tell anyone. And so later on, of course, she was kidnapped, and we know the story. I'll summarize that later on. Who was it? Jatayu, the eagle. He saw Ravan and he fought with Ravan. He was killed. Ram Lakshman came there and talked to Jatayu, and he told them that Ravana had kidnapped. And then they went down. They met, of course, the monkeys, the Sugriva and all the Hanuman and all the monkeys. And then they went to the furthest tip, and they met Sampati, the brother of Jatayu. Sampati is very famous in Bali. It was actually an airline called Sampati Airlines. I went on it a few times. I think it's now it's kaput, but they went bust. But anyway, there was an airline called Sampati Air. As soon as I saw it, I said, I've got to go on that. Like they got Garuda over there. I've got to go on Garuda. Because now I don't go because I haven't got a very good record. But anyway, so I went on Sampati, I went on Garuda. So anyway, so Sampati told him about Ravan, and he fought with Ravan, actually defeated Ravan, and put, there's a whole description how he, with these talons, he put marks in Ravana's body, and Ravana surrendered to him, and they made a kind of a truce. That's before he knew what happened with him. But anyway, so a beautiful story is told there in regard to that. But as far as, now here we find that the Lord exhibited anger. This was not born of frustration, because the Lord could get Sita back any time he wanted to, and he wasn't frustrated with the ocean. It was just a pastime. He could have immediately just gone. So it wasn't, that anger wasn't born of frustration. It was anger as a type of mercy, red hot. Comes from the eyes, red hot anger. Of course, you know, and Prabhupada goes at length here to say that the impersonalists cannot accept that any of these types of emotions are spiritual. How can it be? These are they equate it to mundane anger, just like mundane greed, mundane lust. How can this is all illusion? This is all it cannot be transcendental. But Prabhupada very nicely explained, very philosophically, of the one eternal who is supporting all the other eternals. These eternals have so many qualities. Why not the one eternals maintain? Why can't he also have those qualities? And even if you say, well, it's all an illusion, as the impersonalists say, where did the whole concept come from? Where did the concept of qualities come from? Where did all this come from? Must come from somewhere. So very nicely explained by Srila Prabhupada here, philosophically and logically, explaining the position of the one eternal. What is it? Qualitatively one, but quantitatively, and Prabhupada makes a point here. He says, where can any ordinary mundane eye heat the whole ocean? Of course, we have in modern day fiction, we know of one superhero who had the X-ray vision and the red hot eyes. Was it faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to jump tall buildings in a single bound. I always remember this from a kid. Look up in the sky. It's Superman. It's Super Lord Ramchandra, I say. So you have this in the mundane world, you have all these superheroes. Of course, the superheroes are kind of big these days, but in our time there wasn't so many of them. There was kind of Batman and Superman, but the Superman was very famous for having that vision and the red hot eyes. He could burn right through and everything like that. So that concept was there, but Lord Ramchandra manifested in reality. In reality, he looked with red hot eyes. Now what had happened, that when they arrived there at the shore of the ocean, it was Sugriva, Vibhishana, who at that time had surrendered to Lord Ram, and Lakshmana had thought about how to, they knew that Sita was in Lanka, how to get over the huge ocean, and so they suggested to Lord Ramchandra that we pray to the sea god, Samudra, to help us. So this is so they best to offer prayers to the sea god, because Lord Ramchandra didn't have to do any of these things, he already knew, but nevertheless he did. He accepted their proposal, so he sat down and spread some, it is described, he spread some daba grass there, and he sat down in meditation and did prayers to the sea god, and he did that for 3 days. 3 days, and still the sea god didn't appear, and then he became angry with him for not appearing, and the red hot eyes. But the description in the Ramayana, this is what he said. He turned to Lakshmana, and he after he glanced and agitated the ocean itself and agitated all the aquatics who were very fearful, and he said this is very nice. He said, the low-minded mistake courtesy and gentleness for want of strength. Mildness is simply wasted on them. So after speaking these harsh words, after the red hot eyes, he started invoking, he took up his bow. Now this bow of Lord Ramchandra was a very special bow. It was actually Vishnu's bow. And Shiva's bow was given to. There was a contest between. There's a whole other story about a contest between Vishnu and Shiva in battle. The demigods wanted to see who would win, and so Vishnu made some bows. One was to Vishnu, one was Shiva. Shiva's one went, I think. Actually, Lord Ram got Shiva's bow because that was given to Janaka, and Parasuram got the Vishnu bow. So anyway, this bow was very powerful. He began to string it and invoke different astras to go in the arrows. Now there's a whole description here, a very wonderful description of when he did that and started to draw his arrows. It was like everything went black. The whole sky turned black, and there was like a hurricane. There was lightning started to flash, wind started to clash, thunderous sounds. People were getting blown. They had to hold on to anything, the Lord started to put the arrow on his bow. There's a whole description they're given in the Ramayana. What happened just when the Lord started to string his bow? Everyone was so fearful. Sounds, the upper planetary systems, it went everywhere. And then he started to fire arrows into the ocean. So he turned and said to Lakshmana, he said that this ocean won't come. With my astras, I'm going to just dry it up and we'll walk across there. We'll just walk across. It doesn't want to come and come before me. What arrogance. So I'll just dry it up with my astras and we'll walk across. So he was doing like that, sending all these astras. He was about to put the Brahmastra on the one arrow, and just at that time Samudra came up, and there's a whole description how he came up in the middle of the ocean. He came up out of the ocean, and he was very effulgent, and the whole description of what he was wearing, very beautiful description. And he came before the Lord and he begged forgiveness, and he didn't recognize who he actually was. He said, "We get many prayers," he said. There's a whole back and forth there. We get many prayers. Many people come to us and pray. I know in Bali they go, and in India also, where they live by the ocean, they come and they offer prayers. Every day you see in Bali, they offer prayers to the ocean. They make offerings and everything like that. Samudra, very famous there. So I get many prayers all the time. So we are the ocean. I cannot respond to everything. So I didn't understand your position. So then he was making prayers like that. So then please subdue your anger. So that one Brahmastra, he said, well, this one is ready to go. I can't go in vain. Where should I send it? And Samudra said, there's one demon somewhere. So that was another story. There's one demon up there. Send it up there to take care of that asura. So he did. That was another story about that astra. But anyway, so he said, I will assist you. You can build the bridge and I will hold up the bridge. And this one monkey, his name is Nala. He is actually the son of Vishvakarma in monkey form. So Nala, he organized, he said yes, he made a big speech and said yes, he has reminded me of my position and I can assist. So at that time Samudra disappeared, and then the monkeys started to bring in all the different logs and rocks and all sorts of things to build. Now this bridge is described as being very wonderful. There's actually a measurement given of it in the Ramayana of being 10 yojanas wide. Now yojana is given as 8 miles. So if you go by that, it was 80 miles wide. Because when the monkeys went over there were crores. The description is there were many crores of monkeys. There wasn't a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand. There were crores, millions of them that went over that bridge. They couldn't even all fit on the bridge. The bridge was 10 yojanas wide, 80 miles wide, and 100 yojanas long. 100 yojanas long. So 800 miles. 800 miles. So there were many crores, millions and millions of monkeys. Some of them were going on the bridge, some of them going along the side of the bridge, some of them couldn't fit on. They were in the ocean, kind of jumping in the ocean and jumping back on. Now, Sugriva requested Lord Ram and Lakshman. He said, Ram, this is a long way. You go on the shoulders of Hanuman and go in the front of the army, and Lakshmana can go on the shoulders of Angada, Vali's son. So this is a description how they flew. Some monkeys could fly. Some of them were actually just flying. They could fly, although they couldn't fly the whole distance. They had to come down and fly again. Only Hanuman was able to. We know the story. Hanuman jumped over them and he got big again and jumped right over. And then no other monkey could go that distance. So this is a wonderful description, and the bridge itself glowed. It was effulgent, And the descriptions is that those denizens of the heavenly planets were amazed just at the bridge, just at the side of the bridge, and they came down and were in the sky looking at and offering prayers to Lord Ram. Very wonderful section. And so in this way they were able to cross over and go over to Lanka. Although Ram didn't have to do any of these things, he could have just got Sita back any time he wanted, but different leelas are portrayed to attract living entities such as you and I to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, instead of to other mundane personalities. So here Prabhupada finishes by saying that there is no mundane difference of value between the sentiments of the Supreme on the absolute plane. Such sentiments are definitely not absent in the absolute, as the impersonalists think, making their mundane estimation of the transcendental world. So we shouldn't try to have a mundane interpretation of spirituality. We have emotions. Of course, these emotions are now somewhat corrupted. You know, love, the original divine love, turns into hate, and you know, because there's greed in the spirit, greed for, you know, engaging in more and more service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's, you know, you can move on to lust, which is actually love. You know, there's anger. Anger can be used. Hanuman was angry with Ravan. He was angry with Ravan. Sugriva was angry with Ravan. It is said even Sugriva jumped over there. He somehow or other, after Hanuman came back, Sugriva, when he heard what, you know, how Sita was there, Sugriva made himself, well, he jumped over there, and he found Ravan's palace, and he made himself real small, and then he went into the room of Ravan, and Ravan was sitting, and then he made himself real small, and he was running all up and down the body of Ravan, and he went right up to his face and spat right in his face. Then, you know, I mean, Ravan was a bit taken aback. What's this? Who's this? So then he tried to grab him so many ways, but he escaped, and then he jumped back. He grew big and he jumped back again. When he got back, actually, it is mentioned that Lord Ramchandra chastised him. He said, you know, you shouldn't have done that. You know, don't underestimate Ravana. He's very powerful. You could have been very easily killed. And so he chastised him. He said, but then Sugriva explained, I couldn't help myself. I was so angry with him. I had to jump over there and at least spit in his face. Now, there's very wonderful stories. You know, yesterday we had a little bit of a, you know, introduction to Lord Ram. Today's the story of the red hot eyes and the building of the bridge. And you can go every day telling the stories from the Ramayana. But main thing to remember that these stories are not at all fictional. They are incidents that happen, as all these incarnations are mentioned here. They are incidents that happened long ago. And that the Supreme Lord, he must have all the qualities. We are qualitatively one with the Lord, but quantitatively he has these things in unlimited way. So today also is the disappearance day of Narottam Das Thakur, and Narottam Das Thakur is one of our very famous acharyas. In the songbook we sing many of the songs of Narottam Das Thakur, and so, you know, I can't tell the whole story of Narottam Das Thakur, but he appeared in around 1520. He lived for some time. I think he lived a fairly long life. There's no exact date given of his disappearance or how long he lived. There's some difference of opinion there. But nevertheless, very wonderful devotee. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has composed an astakam, 8 prayers glorifying Narottam Das Thakur. You know, and you know, the story is that when Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were going to, now he took birth in Khetri. Khetri is in now Bangladesh. It was then East Bengal. So I know a few years ago that ISKCON Bangladesh celebrated a big on the disappearance or I think the appearance of Narottam Das Thakur. They had a big festival in Khetri. You can go there, but I haven't been there. But I was reading about it at the time, and they had a big festival there. Where at the place of Narottam Das Thakur's appearance, and there's the Padma River, and there's a place called Prematali where I was just saying that where Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda came to that spot, and when they came to the river, all of a sudden Lord Chaitanya was just calling out Narottam, 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 and Lord Nityananda said, well, why are you calling out this name? And Lord Chaitanya said, you don't remember when you were in Puri, you shed many tears of ecstasy out of love. He said, I captured that love, and now I have come here, and I want to deposit it in the Padma River. So in the future, Narottam can get this prema. So Lord Chaitanya requested the personification of the Padma River to keep this prema until Narottam came there. And she said, how will I recognize him? When he goes there, your banks will overflow. So when he was 12 years old, now right from the beginning of his life, the description is given that he was very attached to Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, and then when he was 12 years old, he had a dream. Lord Nityananda came to him in a dream and told him to go to the Padma River. And then so he went there, and when he went inside, the deity of the river came and gave him the prema, and it's at that time his body turned into a golden hue. So there's a lot of story of Narottam Das Thakur. I can't go into it fully now, but you can read about Narottam Das Thakur. He eventually went to Vrindavan, took initiation from Lokanath Goswami, and was ordered by Lokanath Goswami to go back to Khetri and preach in East Bengal. And of course the famous installation ceremony of the 6 deities there, and the Gaur Purnima really recognised as the first Gaur Purnima festival, Narottam Das Thakur. So you can read a little bit about that if you want to, the Narottam Das Thakur disappearance day today. So Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Has anyone got any question or comment they'd like to make or ask?
Hare Krishna. It is very surprising that Ravana sent all his
Ravana
to kill Ramachandra, and he didn't take care of that first. Why is that?
He didn't what first?
Why didn't Ravana go?
Take the mic down. No, down a bit.
Why didn't Ravana go straight and kill Ramachandra and send all his sons? He annihilated his whole family first. Is there any external reason for that?
Why didn't he go first?
Why didn't he go first?
Yeah, because he likes to have a dramatic performance of Leela. I mean, he can go first and just do it very quickly, but then what we would all read about. So therefore, he does these dramatic performances, and there are other reasons given, correlated stories, the curse of this one and then the other one. Ravana was cursed, and so many other. And there's a whole story there. But the Lord comes and displays these dramatic pastimes, so that normally we're interested. We're very much affected by the mode of passion, ignorance. We're more interested in heavy drama and intensity than very nice things. So therefore, the Lord has to mix it with niceties and drama, and then to attract the minds. And still, after so many millions of years, people are reading Ramayana, and they're reading the Leela of Lord Ramchandra. So how powerful is that story? There's so many. You could go to so many incidents in the Leela of Lord Ram, and be fascinated by each one. So this is all there to absorb our attention, just like Krishna Leela and Ram Leela, and all the different incarnations have their Leela. Yes.
It's generally accepted that Sri Lanka was the original Lanka, but I have read that there's some controversy about that.
Yeah. Of the what deities?
That Sri Lanka was the original Lanka, but I have read different things that there was another island.
Well, I mean, there is a story of there was a contest between Vayu and Sesha, Ananta Sesha, and this is told in one of the Puranas that there was a who was stronger, Vayu or Ananta Sesha. So they had a whole contest where Vayu at the Mount Meru, who could Vayu blow Anantasesha wrapped around Mount Meru, and so there's a story where he couldn't get Anantasesha off, and that one of the peaks from there fell into the ocean, and that is the actual place of first of all, it was inhabited by Kuvera, and then later on it was taken over by force by Ravana. So that is the place of the Lanka. So whether that peak, which became an island, is the actual Lanka of today, I'm not sure about that. Just like in Dwarka, they have a Beta Dwarka, an island, but we know that Lord Krishna had the ocean come up and submerge the original Dwarka. So the Dwarka there today, the Dwarka Island, is another island. So whether Lanka is the original Lanka, I can't say. I can't say whether that's the original Lanka.
So I think that they do have some years ago, I don't know if it was in Back to Godhead, but somewhere I read that I don't know if it was Back to Godhead or somewhere, that they showed their remote imaging, they could see the bridge some point going towards Sri Lanka, is it? Under the water?
Well, yeah. There's one there that's visible called Adam's Bridge. Whether that's the one they see from satellite, I'm not sure about that, but the description was it was 80 miles wide and 800 miles long. So whether that bridge under there, it was the original bridge. Lord Ramchandra did break it, so it went under the ocean, and that was a request by Vishnu to break it. He didn't want, there was a whole reason for that.
Maharaj, at Rameshwaram, I did go to South India a long time with yourself, but I'm not sure if we were together there in Rameshwaram. I'm just trying to...
Did I go with you, did I?
Well, I was there with you and someone was flying with you. But the Rameshwaram, is that the place where you have 7 bathing? You bathe 7 times?
Oh yeah, you can go
there. That is that place, yeah?
There's 7 tanks, yes.
What is that 7 about?
What?
What are those 7 bathing?
There's a whole story of Leela's about the 7 tanks of bathing. Okay, I don't want to go right into that. They do have to look that up. But you can go to a place where they say that these are stones from the original bridge. And they float in the water. Of course, whether they are or not. I remember one devotee, I've got to have one of these. But I didn't think they were the original stones. Anyway, there's many stories we won't get into. We haven't got time to get into it. But I have to finish now. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, last comment.
Just one light note to end on. There's one story with Srila Prabhupada where a devotee was complimenting him on the work that he's done to spread Lord Chaitanya's mission. And he was saying, you're just like Lord Ram, you crossed the ocean and you brought Lakshmi back to India. And Prabhupada said, yes, just like Lord Ram, I've been listed an army of forest monkeys.
You know that Lord, there's one story in the monkeys, because the monkeys had to undergo so much austerity. Lord Ram promised them in his next incarnation that he'll treat them very kindly. And so in the Krishna Leela, you know, in the Damodar story, in the Damodar Leela, you know, where Krishna was angry with Mother Jasoda, and he went and he was distributing all the... that's why he did like that, because he wanted to look after the monkeys, because he promised them in the Ram Leela. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hare Hare.